Hey, Winging It is a show by Oddbird about web design, development, and our approach to solving problems. On today's show, James will talk to Miriam and I about the do's and don'ts of anchor positioning. Thank you both for being here today. How are you doing?
Doing all
Pretty
right.
good. Yeah.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm just peachy. Weather's getting warmer. Just started the
Yes.
garden. But that's not what
Yes.
people care about. James, why don't you kick us off with why we're here today?
Yeah. Yeah. As we were thinking about this show, I was thinking there's a lot of excitement about anchor positioning, and there's also it a lot of not stress, but a lot of questions about is it ready? What can we do? What can't we do? Is it baseline? I think last winging it, when my mic conveniently cut out, there was a question, is anchor positioning baseline yet? And I said no. And I couldn't explain why because I didn't have a mic. But hopefully we'll get into a little bit of why that is. So we're kind of framing this as the do's and don'ts of anchor positioning, some things that you can do and can't do or can't do right now. It's maybe a little bit higher level of what you can and can't do. But I think these are some kind of, I don't know, uh, interesting ways of looking at at the state of anchor positioning. And maybe some of this is just, I had some demos that I wanted to share that I thought were maybe a bit helpful. So I will dive in on doing some of that. And my first do is don't forget, or I guess it's a don't forget the containing block. Containing block is one of these things that I think is people don't really do much with until anchor positioning. Maybe you've run into the concept a little bit, but it's a little bit out there, and then you hit it with anchor positioning and you're like, what is this thing? So I this demo kind of shows what containing block is, but it also shows another cool thing, that an anchor function is a length, which I've talked about. And I think there's just a lot of really cool things that you can do with this. So in this here, I have a wrapper div, the pink line there, and two inputs. And if you move those, this blue positioned element right here gets positioned relative, or it's anchored on those thumbs. And that is just using, let's see, inside block start, where we're anchoring the on the top and the bottom, so just to those different things, which is great. The uh, the cool thing about this is our containing block right now, we're positioned, or our positioned element is position absolute, which means that it is contained within a parent somewhere. In this case, it's our wrapper, because our wrapper has a position relative. And so that's containing the this box, this blue box here. And what that means is when we're calculating this anchor, we're mostly concerned about the inline values here, the anchor start and end. This anchor, and ignore the absolute for a second, but this anchor value right here is, we're basically converting that into a length, and it's from the edge of the containing block. So this inline start, we're from this edge to this edge. That's the length that we're computing there. And that's, I mean, in this case, you don't really need to know that or where that containing block edge is coming from, because it's just, it just kind of follows along, and that's the effect you're going for. But if we are expanding the inputs outside of the containing block, so we have a negative margin on the inline edge, I have the anchor, or the inline start and end, set up to be the absolute value of that length. So that means when you come outside of this, the box goes back into it by that length, because we're taking the absolute value of that length. Is this useful at all? No, but it is kind of, I think, helpful to see this is a length, and you're able to use it in ways like this to you're not just confined to this point or the point directly on here. It's not really that point that's important. It's the length, the offset from the containing block edge to this anchor. Does that make
Right. So
sense?
yeah. So there's sort of two things here. One is you need to know where the containing block is if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing anything weird. And the other is that you can do math with the result. You don't have to
Yes.
just anchor to it. You
Yes.
can anchor to some math equation based on it.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So one common thing that would break this if our positioned area, if this is position fixed, that's going to take the containing block for this blue area outside of the dotted line and make it our viewport. So then it just follows, because in this case, we're still calculating from the edge over here to this
Mm-hmm.
point, and we're not, I mean, this is still positive value, so we're offsetting by that same amount. So that's where, yeah, you have to kind of know what those edges are.
Do any dev tools yet have a way to like show the containing block? Show me the containing block for a thing.
Yes, so that's a great question. Um, and there is not a there's not anything built in. Ramis, who's on the Google DevRel team, has a containing block DevTools extension, um,
Hmm.
which sorry, Stacy, for jumping ahead a few items here. Um, but I was testing it on this earlier, and I think the algorithm might not be working in this particular case. So I'm trying to think if there's a good explanation here. Oh, that is tiny. So if you are, what that extension does is adds a containing block section to your tools.
Oh,
And so then you can kind of see, um, let's see if there's a good, I mean, there's probably nothing interesting to
so
inspect
you have
on
to.
this, but oh yeah, well, let's see. If you, it shows you, okay, code is contained by this pink
Right,
line out here, and there's this 24 pixel offset here, and there's some kind of offset there. So this is one option, this containing block. DevTools extension is one way of kind of
hmm.
investigating where is this this containing block. I know Polypane, I forgot to look into it before this, but I know Polypane also has some containing block work
Oh,
on there.
nice.
So yeah, that'd be another option. But yes, this is, I think
It'd
Ramos
be
would
great
be,
to see this show up in the native dev tools for the different browsers.
yeah, I agree. Um,
Because I think like people sort of think of position relative as the way you get a containing block, but I think there's other things that create containing blocks that might surprise people. Like I think if
yeah,
you put something in a grid, the grid cell becomes a containing block.
yeah. And let's see, let's see, containing block. There there is a good list on MDN of what generates a
Mm,
containing block. So yeah, there's a whole algorithm here. If it's, I mean, if it's absolute or fixed, then anything with a filter, backdrop filter, transform is going to create that container. Um, or yeah, there's a few other options, a container type, a content visibility, things like that. And so yeah, those will create that containing block, and the containing block is in a non-anchor positioned scenario. It's if you do say top 5 pixels, what is that 5 pixels from? What are you offsetting
right,
that 5 pixels from? Or right 2 pixels or 10 em or whatever. What are you offsetting that from? What is the block that's containing it that you're offsetting from? Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting here that that sort of doesn't matter until it matters, I guess.
yeah,
Like you don't have to think about the containing block when you're just anchoring to something. and actually want to be at that same position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the question in the chat? Can you define a container? Are there other ways to explicitly be like, nah, jump up 3 containers or use a different container? Or
No, I don't think there's a way currently of like saying, actually, I want this other thing to be my container. It's very much based on how your DOM is set up. So you kind of have to position things. Like I had to make this demo work, I had to put the positioned div inside of that wrapper. It wouldn't work if it was outside of that wrapper, because that's how it knows what its container is.
Is that like an anchor and the thing anchored to it have to have the same containing block?
You're going to break my brain on this one. I know it's the anchor. The anchor cannot be the containing block for the anchored element, but they do need to share an ancestor. And there's more complicated rules that I will get wrong.
Is that how it's supposed to work, or is that just how it works now? Like, I think that's probably part of the reason that people might hesitate using this is you have to have your markup in a specific way for it to work.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I hadn't thought of. I mean, in some ways, I've just kind of been reading this back and like, this is how it needs to be. But yeah, I mean, we're used to, I mean, maybe in like the React world, having a sort of, what's the word? Like just having like your dialogue element at the bottom of your markup that, it's like not a tunnel, it's a wormhole, or I forget what the terminology that they use, but like you're able to just kind of declaratively say use this thing. But yeah, there are some limitations in HTML. Part of that is there are limitations around you can't impact, or you can't set up circular reasoning or circular logic to make sure that you're not offsetting something by something and then offsetting that other thing by the same thing, and then you get a circular loop that crashes things. So I think some of it is intentional, some of it is just limitations based on how browsers are architected. So yeah, I would have to kind of tease out a bit more of what those differences are. Miriam, you had said you can do lots of math on this. Here's another example of this. I have this on let's see, just on an input range, just because it's easy that way, but you can imagine a tooltip that shows up on a block of text on just one word in that text. That word could be anywhere on the screen, left or right. And so you want a kind of a tooltip to pop up relative to that. And that's great. But you can get into some fun situations with the little pointer, the arrow there. Right now it's not anchored at all, but if we can just do left anchor, if we do label center, for instance, we're going to anchor that to the center of the label, which is great, except I have a little bit of a margin here, and it's that this box doesn't want to go off screen, so it loses its connection there, and that's a little bit annoying. We can instead anchor to the thumb, which in that case, it works until it doesn't, and our tooltip goes right off. But you can do math. Remember, we're working with lengths. And
so are we going to do like a min or a max?
A clamp here. I won't go through the whole thing, but basically, our ideal is in the middle here. We want to anchor on the thumb center, which is what we have most places. But our minimum is going to be the label's left side plus the arrow size to adjust, and then our maximum is going to be the right side with some arrow adjustment. And so there, it just goes over to the side and no more. Is
That's
this
very clever.
It's clever. Is it useful? I don't know, but it might be helpful to for understanding kind of how you can use this as as a length. Um, the one big caveat with that though is you can use it as a length only on insets. You can't use it on a rotate, for instance. You can't use it as an opacity. You can't use it in
Because
a
it's a
lot of
length.
it because it's a length.
I mean, a length wouldn't be valid in opacity or in rotation. You would need
But
an
you
angle or a
Yeah, but you can't use it to create one of those values either. So you
right.
you can't use like cosine or sine to create an angle based on two lengths to get an angle.
Mm.
That the once you use an anchor function, that whole or you can't even like make a custom property with an anchor function and then use that custom property on something else that isn't an inset. And or
So,
even
like the
on
anchor function is only allowed inside of insets.
yes, actually, I'm trying to remember. Is it insets or so the position or the anchor size has a little bit more leeway, um, which includes margins, I think. But I'm forgetting the exact list of what they can do, but it's a very limited list that you can do on anchor functions. Yeah, so that's one caveat there. I think
Yeah.
there, yeah,
Oh, I mean, I saw like when we were posting about this, I saw a conversation between Tamani and
yeah,
Roman talking about a recent resolution to allow anchor in shape, I think.
yes,
But
yeah.
so is it sort of like just one at a time features that like we're figuring out how to allow the anchor function to work in different places?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case where we were very limited initially because, well, we don't know. Um, I think one of the realities of anchor positioning is it touches everything. It's a
Right.
very broad thing, so it's very hard to know what is a reasonable thing or like what actually is reasonable. And so yes, here's a I think this is something that CSS working group said, yeah, this seems reasonable. Let's see if we can make it happen. How can you use an anchor within a shape? And again, because anchor is a length, you'd need to create, you could use it for the X or the Y value there, but you would need to define or set it both. I think it's not a vector. It's not a XY position. An
Hmm.
anchor function is just one. Um, so yeah,
Right.
that's one option. I think, or that's one thing, but I think yeah, I think they're slowly adding more what you can do. Um, yeah, and let's see. I see Tobias had a question. Can typed arithmetic help out with turning it into an angle? Or is it a different type than length? So typed arithmetic, it's not really no, this can't or you can't turn an anchor function into something else
Well,
currently.
that's sort of, yeah, that's sort of what you were saying is like the
Yeah,
problem is not the type,
yeah,
which typed arithmetic would allow you to change the type. But the problem is that it's actually limited in where you're allowed to use it. And you're
yeah,
only allowed to use it right now in a couple specific places that accept lengths.
yes.
So until we are able to use it in some other places,
Yeah.
changing the type won't help.
Yeah, for instance, you can't use the I don't know, it's a hack to turn the or use a counter to show a value. Um,
Right.
which
Well,
you could
there's a new function proposed, and I think being worked on that's actually just allows you to change the type of a thing.
that'd be nice.
Because this is something people want quite a bit. And it's based on the way that the attr function, when you're grabbing an attribute, there's a proposal for being able to do the similar thing, but with just any old value. Say, parse this string as a length, or parse this length as a, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that will be really cool. But again, until we expose, I mean, I think it's partly because when anchor functions are calculated, I mean, they're calculated very late in the game and they're kind of passed through, and so they're invalidated. Yeah, I think it has to do with how it's used and how it's calculated.
Right. You have to wait till after layout to understand, and
Yeah.
that's really late in the process for CSS.
Yeah.
So then there would be a question about how that can impact other things.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a couple don'ts. Don't forget the containing block, or do remember the containing block, I guess, is a more positive way of looking at it. Don't use it just anywhere you want. Sadly, you have to kind of remember where you can and can't use it. And you might run into that. That's definitely a thing. I'd say one do get excited about things that are coming to anchor positioning. There's a lot that is on the way. Let's see, here is, I think it's Una or Kravitz has a demo. This is anchored container queries. So the idea here is you have a container type anchored, a new container type, which is great. And what it does is allows you to respond to the fallback. Well, I'll show you the problem here. With this tooltip, we have a little triangle pointing down when it's above the anchor, and we have a position try fallback to flip it over. Without container queries, this arrow would still be pointing down and pointing away from the anchor. And that's not what we want. So we want to make sure that's pointing the right way. And so what you can do is you say container anchored fallback flip block. So basically, when my container is or my anchored container is in the flip block condition or fallback, then we're going to flip the arrow and move it around.
Which part of this, is it the containing block or the anchor or the thing that you're anchoring? Which one is the container?
Which one is the container?
So you add container type to which thing here?
Yes, you add it to the tooltip itself.
The tooltip itself.
Yes, so this here. So it's how am I contained? And then there's
containing block. We got a lot of these things. They stack up weirdly sometimes. Okay.
Yeah. So I think this will unlock a lot of cool new functionality for sure, where we're able to kind of respond better to how things are falling back. This is still, I think, Chrome only, so still a little bit out there yet, but it's something you can play around with. The other cool thing is you can use it. This is a customizable select, which also uses anchor positioning to place the item. And here we have a little bit of a different problem. This was Luke Warlow had a question like, how do I do this? And he kind of nerd sniped me into figuring this out and realizing, well, it's not quite there yet. But basically this customizable select, which I haven't customized a ton, but we have rounded edges all around when it's closed, and then we have flat edges on the bottom so that it looks like one cohesive card there. The problem is when we flip it, if we didn't handle that, we would have our edges would look bad.
Right. So you have to flip not only on the position element, but also on the positioning anchor.
Yes. And so, and also this caret has to, or this arrow has to point the same or the right way, which is known by, it's known by, I mean, here we're getting into some of these circular logic things where how do we know, how can we impact that? So there is a match container proposal that is similar to media or match media, and what allows you to say do an element dot match container and a container query essentially, and then you're able to watch for when that changes. And based on that, I'm then basically changing a class on the button, and yes, I could break it somehow, I'm sure, and have some problems with that. But based on that, you're able to switch which side the containment, or which side the border radius is on, and which way the anchor this is pointing. The one interesting thing that I think there's on the CSS working group issue that was just shown, there's a question about what are you listening for, or what are you listening to the change on? Is it on the item with the container, or is it on an item inside of the container that is changing? Because a container queries can't really know about themselves. They only know about what their parent containers are doing. And so it's, but the container query that's changing is on the container. So the polyfill is set up. Oh yeah, I'm using a polyfill. I forget if I mentioned that. There's a great polyfill that does that, but I'm listening on one of the elements, or one of the select elements or options inside of the dropdown. And the dropdown itself is the container. So I have to listen on a child, which is kind of weird. And I think there's probably use cases for when am I as a container changing, and when am I as a child of a container in a different situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, you're sort of working around, like, container queries are built in a specific way to avoid loops. And anchor positioning similarly. And you're working around that because in JavaScript, you're just allowed to create loops.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It seems to work decently. Your solution there.
Yeah, this works. I think I would love if this didn't need to be polyfilled.
Right.
And yeah, I do wonder if anchored container query, if that more often you're interested in the container itself, where and perhaps style queries, you're interested in the container itself, but then other container queries, I guess, like the width or things like that. I get the more classic container queries. Am I allowed to call them classic container queries at this point?
Legacy, call them legacy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Those are, I think you're more interested in, am I inside of a container? That is my
Well,
sense.
yeah,
But
I mean, I think all across the board, there are cases where people would like the container to know its own size or whatever, but that's a loop problem. And so it's not going to happen in CSS, even if it's a good use case.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it is a good use case, so. Yeah. So that's a good thing to remember. Of just there are exciting things coming. And this one, I'll skip that for time. I think another do right now is looking at the ways, or just trying it out. There are a lot of really good tools out there to kind of play around with it. One of the ones I wanted to point out is Anchor Positioning in Space from Shock or Neathling. Apologies for the pronunciation, but there's good lessons on it. There's a playground, there's a quiz you can take to kind of get a feel for it. And it's a great way of learning. There's also awesome anchor positioning that with a whole bunch of different guides and videos and articles, etc., that you can explore more. I do think it is worth learning anchor positioning and playing around with it. But I do think you also need to be fairly aware of how it might not work out all the time, and maybe not be surprised that it's not working out at a specific time. I think I've seen a couple fairly, I would say very competent CSS people who have kind of encountered anchor positioning, or they've when they've gone more in depth into it, they're just like, what is happening? Why does it work this way? How, like, it just kind of, there's some fundamental, I don't know if it's a fundamental shift or if it's just things aren't necessarily in the boxes I assumed in my head, or what it is. But I do think that I think there are enough rough edges that it's I'd say don't be surprised if it doesn't work exactly as you expect.
This feels to me like a thing we've seen across the board with new CSS features, where there's sort of like a thing that has been hard to do for a long time. The working group figures out a way to pull it off, but that has to fit in with all of the constraints of how rendering actually works. And so we're sort of seeing more and more the CSS and browser internals are becoming exposed, and places where people had a simplified mental model of what's happening. We're now we're creating features where that simplified mental model doesn't hold up anymore. And that's rough. And it's, I think it's an interesting question of well, should the CSS working group, should browsers, should somebody be trying harder to smooth those edges? Or is it well, if we want this kind of power, we're going to have to actually learn the mental model?
Yeah, I think that's a really, I'm glad we have that, or for that perspective, that this isn't a novel anchor positioning only issue. But yeah, it is exposing a whole lot of new concepts. Like containing block is one of those where it's not new. It's been there. It's been used in a variety of different ways, but yeah, it's having to think about it in a different way, or yeah.
You play that game of, is it supposed to do this, or am I doing something wrong, or is it not supported yet?
Right.
And that's a fun game that you play when you're working with new CSS features.
Yeah, I think that's another really good point. Anchor positioning is in Interop 2026 again. It was in 2025, and great progress on that. But it's in 2026 as well. I think partly to smooth out some of those edges and make sure some of those things get handled, but also maybe some of the new features as well. Although I don't think that's what Interop is really set up for. But as to that point, and this is just one. This is release notes from Safari 26.4 that I saw, and I was like, yes, this is a good encapsulation of some of the issues with anchor positioning. So
can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, I'm in the wrong window. Yeah, so fixing infinite style resolution when a position try box was inside a display non-subtree. Like, who tests for that? But someone did, someone broke that, and and then you have, or I mean, yeah, and then you have to think: is this because of me? Is it because of the browser? Is this to spec, not to spec? And there, yeah, there's, oh, I mean, not all of these are anchor positioning, but a lot of these are. And this is just one release, and I think just some of them. The other browsers, I think, are coming out with some things like that. The let's see, this is the web features baseline status for anchor positioning issue that where we've been kind of talking about, like, when is anchor positioning ready to be baseline, and it has been lots of like tracking down bugs, and then figuring out, okay, what is actually to spec, and like adding a ton of new properties to BCD, mapping things like, okay, or what is a bug, uh, what about auto margins being disabled when position area is not none, all of these little pieces, that kind of go point together. And Daniel Beck is just amazing at kind of connecting all these dots and making things work. And there was a question of, can we find a happy path? Is there a subset of anchor positioning that we can say, yes, go use this?
Right.
And how web features works is you say, you take some browser compat data keys, that that kind of compose this feature, and then you base the support on those keys. And those keys are like, let's see if there's a good example, like CSS properties, position anchor. So is the position anchor property supported? And then are all of the keyword values supported? Are all the different units supported sometimes, depending on what it is. And let's see, let's see if there is a easy way of getting to all of the, let's see if this shows all of the features. Yeah, so like there's just a ton of, actually this is just position area. There's I don't know, 100, 200 different keys. And all of them are mostly supported except for an edge case, or except for something. And so there's not really like, here is this perfect happy path to get to, yes, this works. And then you throw in, support for older browsers. Oddbird has a great polyfill, and it does a lot, but it doesn't do everything. One of the big caveats is popover and position area don't really, or you can't use the polyfill with popover and position area, just because of, I forget, if I think it's a limitation on our implementation in a browser, and yeah, I think it's you have to remember to use an anchor function in those cases if you want to use that, or use a popover. So there's a lot of rough edges, and that is why it's not baseline yet. I think,
well, it's interesting. I mean, baseline is sort of a oversimplifying something that's actually pretty complex.
yeah.
So like going to look at MDN, you can see the nuance. But if you're waiting for the unnuanced version, there's a lot of nuance to resolve first.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is true. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I foresee many follow-up issues or episodes talking about anchor positioning, what you can do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think for sure, play around with it, look at it, see if it does work in your situation. There are definite use cases where it does work and it does make sense. But yeah, just be prepared for it to take a little bit longer than you expect, and maybe a little bit more frustration than you expected. And yeah, file those browser
and then go
bugs.
read all of James's articles where he talks about how to fix the things.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, folks, we're going to try to keep this one a little shorter than normal. So please go visit oddbird.dev/winging it if you want to access any of the many, many links we had on today's show, along with all the links to the demos. Thank you so much, James, for putting together all those amazing resources for us. I'm definitely going to bookmark that bug tracking one at the end there, just so I can always figure out why it might not be working. Send us feedback. Tell us what topics you'd like to hear more about. We're always open to listening to new people and new ideas. Miriam, you have a course coming out. Would you like to share anything about what's happening with the course?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of filming it right now and putting together the site for you to access it. But it really is trying to explain the CSS mental model, what's happening under the hood, how the browser thinks about it, so that when you run into these things, you know what a containing block is, you know how the parts are actually working, so that CSS doesn't feel like a bucket of hacks, but feels like a system that you can learn and understand and work with. That's the goal. So hopefully coming out in the next
Super soon. Okay, great.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, great.
Excellent. If you'd like to support us, please like and subscribe. If you want more from Oddbird, we have a fantastic newsletter. I think the last issue went out yesterday, so sign up now so you don't miss any future ones. oddbird.dev/oddnews. Thank you for joining us, and remember, best practice is a conversation. So let's keep talking. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.